It's a precarious situation we're in at the moment. We're gonna run out of money in about 8 to 10 weeks. The weather's closing in on us here. It's been snowing a little bit. It's been cold. You know, it's that end of season push.
From racing against time to extract all the gold that was available to them before the elements prevented them from carrying out any other mining activity in the Yukon area, to the possibility of not being able to secure the water license that could make a gold mining legend lose everything he had worked for nearly half a century. Here's how Parker Schnabel's dreams came true. Looks like we arrived at the snowy shores of the Yukon. This is where Parker Schnabel and his crew have decided to take on an imposing challenge. You see, Parker had managed to enter into some sort of deal with Tony Beets, and now Parker and his crew must mine a lot of ground before they get to the end of the season. Will they be able to do this and grab all the gold that they can before the fall arrives and ruin their chances to find gold in the Yukon that season? How will the team get to the fortune hidden underneath the mines of the Yukon before the winter befalls them? In order to achieve this, Parker didn't see any other option but to call on his crew of old and new teammates to take on this monumental challenge.
3 more days to finish this will be pretty tight, but we might make it.
This involved the 90 acres of land that they had to mine thanks to Parker's deal with Tony, his gold mining veteran neighbor. It was a pressing race against time, especially as the team had to deal with the fact that this represented a 50% increase in the amount of land that they had mined in the previous year. Thanks to the D10 dozer that they had among their ranks of machines and equipment, the team was eager to rise to the challenge of covering all this land that they had to mine before their deadline was up. That said, it couldn't be an easy task to mine all they could out of the extra 45 acres of land before the week was over. As you can imagine, the team didn't need any reminders from outside that they had to give this job all that they could. Time was running out on them, and it was running out fast as the season was coming to an end. As much as they did not shrink in the face of this challenge, the team had cause to groan when Tony gave them another claim and a half. How were they going to cover all this land? All they had to do was hope that nothing would prevent them from completing their task. Some could say that they'd be riding their luck because of the amount of formidable snow that had fallen that year. Undoubtedly, this would make their job a lot more difficult than it would have been if the land was dry.
Wow, you weren't kidding, huh?
You see it from there already?
Oh, yeah.
It made it difficult for truck drivers like Tatiana Costa, who was trying to get rid of the snow that was making it more difficult for some of the other members of the crew to get to the gold that was waiting for them underneath the soil. As if the presence of the snow didn't add enough, their fears about it were confirmed when they realized that it was taking them too long to get rid of the obstructive snow. Faced with no other choice, Parker must have felt that he had to take a hands-on approach to the problem that they were currently facing. Inspired by the methods of the likes of Big John, his legendary gold mining grandfather and mentor, Parker figured that the best way to get ahead in the face of these developing issues was to tackle the developing problems at once. As Parker tried to figure out how he was going to execute his multitasking plans, Tyson Lee, the man in charge of the excavator, was also struggling to meet his own deadlines. As a result of the overwhelming snowfall that they had just experienced in the area, the team had to dig several ditches so that they could protect the area designated for mining from the constantly falling snow. Eager to make sure that they avoid such problems, Tyson worked his fingers to the bone to make sure that this region is safe for mining. As the team did their best to get a handle of all these pressing problems, Mitch, the crew's foreman and Parker's current right-hand man, also had his own tasks to deal with. His job was to carry out the crucial task of firing up the plant. It actually makes a lot of sense that this is an important job because of how critical the wash plant is to the team's activities out there on the mines.
You know, I've been working on equipment for a long time in the Yukon, and this is one of those things that you hate to see is your machinery about as far away from you as it can be, and then it breaks down.
The next few days must be a testament to the team's drive and resolve in the face of all these problems, because despite all the problems they had faced in recent times, the team was still able to account for about $240,000 worth of gold that was extracted from the mines. While this proved to be just the beginning of their journey, the team was excited because they may just have realized what their full potential may be. If they were able to make almost $250,000 despite all the problems that plagued them in recent times, the sky may truly be the limit for these hardworking gold miners. Following their collaboration, Parker thanked Tony for his help before the leaders of the two gold mining companies decided to go their separate ways so that they could concentrate on their goals for the season. Parker could now focus on Slucifer, one of his key wash plants. That way, maybe he could figure out if the wash plant could help him gather all the gold that he had dreamed of extracting from the Klondike. Thankfully, it looked like all their equipment was in good shape this time. All they had to do now was to get to work so that they could get their hands on that beautiful gold. Well, they'd better gather as much gold as they can now that they are in a period that is free from problems, because they honestly didn't know what else was going to pop up. Consequently, Parker had to accept that his race against time and the elements in the frozen Yukon would make his mission difficult when it came to the extraction of gold there. Thank goodness that these men had a genuine love for the discovery of gold in such places. Parker and the rest of the crew had seen many miners come and go as they did not have the ability to handle the harsh conditions of finding success out in the mines of the Yukon. Rather than quitting just like such people, Parker and his crew bore the pains of having to withstand the full force of the elements and the problems that come along with them by extracting about 45,000 ounces of gold from the ground. This has helped Parker and his men earn more than $80 million today, and at the age of 27, Parker is still looking for more, and this is evident in the fact that he always seems to be plotting on his next moves. However, such moves have been difficult to decide on or to stick to because of the limitations and restrictions that come along with mining today. For example, if it isn't the weather that may prevent one from committing to a period of mining in the desert, it's the territorial restrictions that could limit one's ability to investigate the activities of several potentially fertile mining territories in the area. As a result, Parker has recognized the need for adaptability and expansion if he was ever going to find success in the Yukon. Considering this, Parker figured that the best course of action was to see what the mines of Alaska have to offer to him and his crew. To do this, he hopes he can establish a new claim so that his mining operation could search for gold there. As admirable as Parker's aspirations are, one may have to let the young man know that it will not be easy to run and manage two mining operations in two separate countries. As much as there seems to be a lot of personal and financial stakes at risk with this move, Parker seems certain that this was the road that he wanted to set off on. However, Parker decided that before he turned his attention to the mines in Alaska, he was going to make one final concentrated push in his mining activities in the Yukon. Seems fair enough, wouldn't you say so? It's never good to leave tasks or missions incomplete. Well, they better be quick as they move along because Parker would soon find that they were running out of time thanks to the fact that the water license to the gold-rich airstrip claim that he was occupying at the time was set to expire by the end of the year. As such, you can see how Parker and his men would have to make haste if they were going to get to that beautiful gold in the ground. Failure to do so means kissing all that gold goodbye forever. As much as they need to be quick with their efforts, it must be said that completing the task will not be as easy as one may have thought. For starters, the ever-rising costs of fuel seems to be causing a major logistical problem. Then there is the disrupted supply chain that is making the matters worse for Parker and his team. As a result, Parker and his men must make the best plans because that's the only way they could maximize their chances of success in the mines of the Yukon. Despite such problems, Parker is determined to make a record-breaking gold haul in the seasons to come. At the beginning of a new season, Parker and his men work tirelessly around the clock so that they can execute their preparation plans properly. Despite rushing around to make sure that the season goes as smoothly as possible, Parker is ready to weather the storm that is coming, as he is convinced that this season may be his most trying season yet. Perhaps it's because he decided that they may be able to achieve a 10,000-ounce gold target for the season. Talk about dreaming big. As he deliberated on how to pull this off, he noticed that Tyson was doing some stripping work nearby. After learning from Tyson that everything seems to be going well so far, the pair got busy with organizing the camp while moving some of the obstructive dirt around. This is because they were focusing on stripping the airstrip. Why were they doing this? Well, it was because they suspected that there must be a lot of gold hiding underneath the ground there. After all, in the past, some gold miners had managed to extract about $9 million worth of gold from there. Despite being eager to carry out his gold exploration in this supposedly fertile region, Parker felt that it may be best to leave a portion of this fertile land untouched. This allowed the snow to plant a white blanket in a region of the area while the guys carried out their mining operations on the other parts of the land on the airstrip. He didn't want anybody to disrupt the flow of their work, so he did all he could to ensure that the ramp didn't turn in halfway through their work. Once this was agreed upon, Parker turned his attention to Tony, who just happened to be the owner of the remaining 2 claims at the airstrip. The legendary miner seems to have his fingers in a lot of pies, doesn't he? He asked around to see if he was ever involved in the work there, and Tyson told him that he hadn't noticed Tony's presence in the area for some time now. The last time he had noticed Tony there, the Dutch-Canadian miner had been moving and arranging some equipment in the area. Surprised and confused by Tony's absence, Parker decided that maybe it was worth talking to the veteran miner about his absence. After all, he'd hate to see the old man let his business suffer. Even though they may technically be competitors for the dominance of the mines in the Yukon and in Alaska, Parker can never forget that it was the likes of Tony Beets who gave him a chance when he was first starting out as a young miner looking to stake a claim in the gold mining industry in North America. Thanks to the fact that Tony had given him a helping hand several times, he had a healthy respect for the old man and the experience he had been able to develop following several decades working his way up to become the so-called king of the Klondike. Eager to get to the bottom of this, Parker met the respected Tony at the mills to discuss what may be going on with his absence. Furthermore, although they had been doing well downstream, he wanted to know what was going on with the expiring water license. He couldn't ignore the untapped potential of the land, and he was hoping to make a deal with the older miner. What was this offer? Well, he told Tony that he didn't mind mining on the remaining parts of the airstrip if Tony didn't want to explore those parts of the claims anymore. Some may have taken offense to this offer, but not Tony. This was probably because he knew what an ambitious young man Parker was, and how despite the several differences they may have had in the past, Parker was now a successful young man who wanted to work his way up in the world of gold mining. In light of this, Tony also had to accept that he, too, was still capable of leading himself and his team to success. That may be why he momentarily turned his attention to Mike, his son. He wanted to see how much progress they had made with their hunting efforts. To everybody's dismay, they found that the hunt wasn't going well due to its rather challenging nature. Frustrated, Tony couldn't help but feel that everything was either too expensive or tied up in one complication or the other. Once Tony and his team considered the problems that were currently lying before them, they realized that they needed to act as soon as possible before they lost control of what they had. Looking to the future, Tony asked Mike if they had enough work to keep the team busy in the course of the following season. To his surprise, Mike confirmed that they had so much on their plate, he had already planned to have a chat with Tony if Tony had not come to meet him first. Right now, they had already stripped their land up to the property lines, and still, they had a good portion of the land that still needed attention. Disappointed, Tony couldn't help but voice his displeasure at the fact that he had left things to get to this point due to his lack of presence on the mines. To his disbelief, Mike confessed that he had no plans of doing this work. This was understandable because Mike and the rest of the crew did have a lot on their plate. However, it wasn't going to change the fact that this opportunity to see the gold that they could find in the area could be too good to miss. As such, Tony expressed the fact that not only may he be looking to take a back seat in terms of the mining activities, he also hoped that Mike would be ready to take over the mining activities when the time comes. As such, they needed to sort out the issue with the water license soon. If they do not do so, there's a huge chance that I'd miss out on the plethora of gold that could be found there forever. Following this, the father and son decided to discuss what sort of arrangement they'd have going forward. Tony seemed happy with a flat royalty fee of 15% on the 2 claims. Eager to cut out the need for excessive water licensing applications, Mike accepted what he thought to be a fair deal. After all, Tony had already warned him that he had his work cut out for him, and his experience as a miner would have told him that for free. That said, Tony and Mike himself thought that he was ready to handle the challenge. Now, they could go hard on their gold exploration exercises without having to worry too much about any water licensing problems. This seemed to be the perfect answer to Tony's problems. especially as he eventually came to realize that they actually had taken on a bit too much work while they were out there, and perhaps it was time to take it easy a little. That said, Tony was ready to protect what he had managed to keep for himself after all these years. We must remember that Tony made his way to North America from Europe more than 4 decades ago in search of his fortune. Thanks to his intelligence and expertise, he was able to assemble this gold mining empire that we see today. This has seen him overcome several challenges, and he did his best to become the king of the Klondike. Even a similarly challenging water license application couldn't keep him from going strong with his endeavors. Perhaps that's why he decided to invest millions in equipment so that he could go on with his plans of expansion on the Indian River. Unfortunately for him, Tony didn't account for the most hated snow, which seemed to hinder their activities on the Indian River due to the fact the snow just wouldn't stop falling. This made it difficult for him to make any progress on Paradise Hill. Looking for solutions, Tony pleaded with Mike to assemble a crew so that they could clear up all that obstructive snow from the access road. Turns out Mike is the only one who may be competent enough to perform this job because it took a lot of patience and skill. Taking the responsibility seriously, Mike set off on this job with full focus in mind. He knew of his father's optimism, especially when it came to hitting the target of 5,000 ounces of gold that Tony set. He must have also been aware that his father thought that the only way they were going to hit this target was if they were able to expand their activities on Paradise Hill. That way, he could also get ahead of the rising costs involved in keeping his mining operations going. They must put an end to this snowing problem if they are going to get ahead of their target. But first, they had to deal with the problem of a 38-ton loader that had fallen down a deep hole. Even if they were going to have a chance to pull it out of this hole, they were going to have to find a way of overcoming the ice, which would definitely hinder their efforts. Jack suggested that they may be able to pull it out if they used the 18-ton D6 dozer. However, they struggled to get some traction with the dozer, so Jack suggested that they issue the heavier 28-ton 275 horsepower grader. With the extra weight and added traction, they successfully extracted the fallen machine. Now they had to find a way to scrape through the frozen ground, so they decided to use one of the rock trucks to tackle the problem. As time goes on, chances are that Tony and his men will be able to take on any other obstacles that come before them. That's the only way they could make sure that they could find the gold that they are desperately looking for. From a rush against time to extract all the gold that was available to them before the elements prevented them from carrying out any other mining activity in the Yukon area, to the possibility of not being able to secure the water license that could make a gold mining legend lose everything he had worked for nearly half a century. Here's how Parker Schnabel's dreams came true.